Shadows of Redemption, a father's relentless fight to save his daughter and heal the wounds of the past. David Walker, a 40-year-old seasoned detective, had seen it all. With nearly 2 decades in law enforcement, he had confronted criminals of every kind. His reputation in the police force was impeccable, always sharp, always focused. Yet, beneath the surface, David struggled with an inner turmoil that no amount of crime-solving could soothe. For the last several years, David had put his career ahead of everything else. His relentless pursuit of justice had earned him numerous accolades, but it had also come at a significant cost. He'd grown distant from his wife, Sarah, and their 10-year-old daughter, Lily. They lived in the same house but often seemed like strangers. He'd missed anniversaries, family gatherings, and even the small moments that made life meaningful. All for the sake of his job. David had been trying to find balance, to make amends for the time lost, but work always seemed to pull him back. He told himself that this was what he was meant to do, but deep down, he feared it was too late to rebuild the relationship he had neglected for so long. He had come to realize that his family was slipping through his fingers, but the weight of his responsibilities was too much for him to step away from. Urgent call. One quiet evening, as David sat at his kitchen table, going over case files for an upcoming investigation, his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize, but something in his gut told him it was important. He answered quickly, his heart rate picking up. "David, we have an emergency," said the voice on the other end. It was his partner, Officer Garcia. "There's been a child abduction. The girl's name is Lily. She's 8 years old. The suspect is Victor Cruz. You know him, don't you?" Garcia's voice was tense, urgent. David's stomach dropped. Victor Cruz was a notorious criminal mastermind. He had been involved in a string of kidnappings and human trafficking operations, always staying one step ahead of the law. The fact that Cruz had gone after a child in David's own city made it personal. Even worse, this wasn't the first time Cruz's gang had struck. There were whispers of a network operating in the shadows, taking children for sinister purposes. David had seen the devastation that followed in the wake of such crimes, and now it felt as though the nightmare had come knocking on his own doorstep. David quickly grabbed his jacket, the urgency of the situation flooding his mind. He was well aware of the risks that came with investigating Cruz, but the thought of an innocent child in danger was enough to override any hesitation. "Get the team ready. We're going after Cruz," David said, his voice now steely with determination. As David raced to the precinct, his mind raced with questions. Where was Lily? What were Cruz's intentions? And most pressing of all, what could he do to prevent the unimaginable from happening? When David arrived at the precinct, the situation was already unfolding. He was briefed on the details. Lily had been taken from her home earlier that day, and her parents were in a state of panic. They were already working on leads, but Cruz had a way of disappearing, of vanishing into the dark corners of the city without leaving a trace. David felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He was facing a criminal with the power to destroy lives, and the clock was ticking. He couldn't afford to fail, not this time. Not with Lily's life on the line. In the midst of his focus on the task ahead, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah, asking if he'd be home soon. The message was simple but charged with a layer of unspoken emotion. "We need to talk." David hesitated for a moment, but then he turned his attention back to the case. There would be time for that conversation later. The world outside was dark, the city teeming with danger, and there were lives at stake. This was his job, but now, more than ever, it was personal. Clue discovery. David and his team quickly jump into action, tracing the first few leads to gather information on Lily's abduction. They analyze the footage from nearby security cameras around the neighborhood. As they review the grainy images, they see a black van pull up to Lily's home, just moments before she was taken. The kidnappers wore masks, but they could make out their vehicle's license plate number. It's a small break, but a break nonetheless. As the investigation progresses, David and his team discover that Cruz's gang is not just kidnapping children for ransom, but also selling them overseas. There are rumors of an underground market for stolen children, where families pay a high price to adopt kids from places like Southeast Asia or Eastern Europe. This revelation sends a chill down David's spine. Cruz is not just a criminal, he's a part of something much larger and much more sinister. With this new information in hand, David and his team begin tracking down Cruz's known associates and setting up surveillance on locations tied to the gang. They uncover that Cruz has a network of safe houses scattered around the city where he hides his victims. But Cruz is always one step ahead. He's learned to cover his tracks well, and the team feels the growing frustration as each lead turns into a dead end. Rising pressure. As the hours pass, the pressure begins to mount. David has always been known for his cool-headed approach to investigations, but the case is hitting too close to home. The thought of an innocent child in danger, and the guilt he feels for not being there for his own family, starts to cloud his judgment. In the middle of the investigation, David finds himself alone in his office, staring at a photograph of his daughter, Lily, on his desk. He hadn't realized until now how much he had taken his family for granted. He used to be there for every little moment, her first steps, her first words, the laughter at family dinners, but now, he was missing it all. He hadn't been there for Sarah when she needed him the most, and now, it felt like his daughter was slipping away, just like his marriage was. The guilt is overwhelming, but David pushes it aside. He's determined to save Lily, no matter what it takes. Yet, the pressure continues to weigh heavily on him. He feels torn between his dedication to his work and the looming sense of failure as a husband and father. Meanwhile, his phone buzzes. It's another text from Sarah, just as brief as the first. "I need you here, David. Please, we need to talk." David clenches his fists, trying to hold onto his focus, but the weight of his personal life continues to chip away at his resolve. He can't afford to let his emotions distract him, but the fear of losing Sarah and Lily forever makes it harder to concentrate. Family strain. The emotional toll begins to take its toll on David. As the investigation intensifies, his thoughts are constantly drifting back to Sarah and Lily. He can no longer ignore the tension building at home. His long hours at work, his emotional absence, these things have taken a toll on their relationship, and now, it might be too late to fix things. One evening, as David is poring over case files in his office, he hears a knock on the door. It's Garcia, his partner. David looks up, and Garcia, seeing the exhaustion and turmoil in his eyes, says quietly, "You need to go home, David. Take a break. We've got things covered here." David knows Garcia is right, but he can't shake the feeling that he's losing everything that matters. "I can't." "Not now," David replies, his voice heavy. "I have to find Lily. I have to stop Cruz." The investigation continues, but David's internal battle rages on. He questions whether he's even doing this for the right reasons anymore. Is he trying to stop Cruz out of duty, or is he trying to prove something to himself, something about his worth as a detective, as a husband, as a father? His mind spins with these thoughts, even as his feet move forward, and his team continues to chase down leads. The pressure only escalates as David begins to realize how much of his life he has sacrificed for a career that might not even matter in the end. The hunt for the kidnappers. David's team finally gets a break when they trace the van's license plate to a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of the city. This warehouse, located in an industrial zone that's known for its seedy businesses, has been linked to Cruz's gang in the past. It's the kind of place where no one would bat an eye at the strange comings and goings of criminals. David briefs his team, his voice firm but laced with the pressure he feels. They move swiftly, surrounding the area with a plan to enter from all sides. The closer they get to the warehouse, the more David's nerves tighten. Every moment feels like a race against time. Lily could be anywhere inside, and there's no guarantee she's still alive. As they approach the warehouse, David senses the gravity of what's at stake. This isn't just about a criminal investigation anymore, it's about saving a life, a child's life, and perhaps, for David, it's about redeeming himself. The stakes have never been higher. Tension builds as the raid unfolds. The team prepares for the raid. David's mind races, running through possible scenarios in his head. They know Cruz's gang is armed and dangerous, and the fact that they're operating in a place like this means they won't go down without a fight. David holds up his hand to signal the team to move, and they enter the building with precise coordination. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with danger. The warehouse is dark, with only faint beams of light cutting through the dust. The sound of their footsteps echoes through the empty space. David signals to his team to spread out and clear the rooms, but something feels off. The silence is deafening. David's instincts tell him something is wrong. This place doesn't feel right. As they move deeper into the warehouse, they hear a sound, a door creaking. Without warning, shots ring out from the shadows, and the team is forced into cover. David reacts quickly, instinctively, as he and his team engage in a dangerous firefight with Cruz's men. The adrenaline spikes. David's years of experience keep him focused, but the firefight feels endless. Every shot they fire could be the difference between life and death, not just for the team, but for Lily. The tension is unbearable as each moment brings them closer to the inevitable confrontation with Cruz. The emotional weight of the chase. Amidst the chaos, David's mind shifts between his mission and the growing fear of what might happen if they don't succeed. Every bullet fired, every explosion, every shout from his team reminds him of how fragile life is and how fragile his family's bond has become. His thoughts flash to Sarah and Lily, and it fuels his determination. He can't fail them again. As the team moves forward, clearing room after room, David's sense of urgency intensifies. He begins to make reckless decisions, pushing the team harder, faster. There's a moment where they almost lose control of the situation. David narrowly avoids a gunshot meant for him, and it's only by sheer luck and the quick thinking of his partner Garcia that they avoid a deadly ambush. Discovery of the hidden children. Finally, after what feels like hours, David and his team break into the main area of the warehouse, a large, dimly lit room filled with cages. Inside these cages are several children, terrified and silent. Some are bound, some are in a daze, but all are clearly victims of Cruz's operation. Among them, David spots Lily. She's sitting on the cold concrete floor, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. The sight of her in that cage hits David harder than he expects. For a moment, he freezes, guilt flooding over him. He could have done more for her, for his own family, but right now, he can't afford to let those feelings take over. He pushes the guilt aside and orders his team to secure the area. They begin unlocking the cages, freeing the children. David moves quickly toward Lily, his heart pounding in his chest. She looks up at him, and despite the fear in her eyes, there's a flicker of recognition, a spark of hope. "David," she whispers, her voice trembling, "I knew you'd come for me." David reaches out, his hands shaking as he pulls her into his arms, relief flooding through him. She's safe. But the danger is far from over. Victor Cruz appears. Just as David thinks the worst is over, he hears footsteps behind him. He turns around, and there, emerging from the shadows, is Victor Cruz, his presence menacing, his eyes cold. Cruz is a man used to control, used to being the one in charge. But now, in the face of David's relentless pursuit, Cruz knows that his reign of terror is coming to an end. "You think you've won, Walker?" Cruz sneers, his voice dripping with malice. "You think saving one little girl makes up for all the others I've taken?" David doesn't respond right away. He's done with words. His grip on Lily tightens as he turns toward Cruz, his gaze hardening. The confrontation that's been building for so long is now inevitable. David is prepared to do whatever it takes to stop Cruz, no matter the cost. The rescue. In the dimly lit warehouse, after the tense firefight with Cruz's men, the atmosphere feels thick with a sense of both relief and impending danger. David's heart is still racing as he finally reaches Lily, who is sitting motionless in the cage, her small body trembling from fear. The moment he lays eyes on her, every ounce of exhaustion, frustration, and guilt floods through him. "Lily," David whispers softly, his voice breaking slightly. He can barely hold back the emotion as he kneels down in front of the cage. For the first time in what feels like forever, he is fully present, not as a detective, but as a father. He pulls the cage open and gently pulls her out, enveloping her in a tight embrace. For a brief moment, everything around them fades. The gunfire, the danger, the chaos, they all vanish as David holds his daughter, knowing she's alive, that he has kept his promise to save her. Lily, despite her fear and exhaustion, wraps her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. "I knew you'd come for me," she whispers again, her voice small but filled with a childlike trust that David hasn't heard in a long time. David looks at her, feeling the weight of the past few years, the missed birthdays, the unspoken words, the distance he had put between them. The guilt of not being there for her earlier in life now weighs heavily, but for now, all that matters is that she's in his arms, safe. As David looks around the room, the other children are freed one by his team. There's an overwhelming sense of gratitude in the air, mixed with the horrors they've just witnessed. These children will now have a chance at life again, a chance to heal from the trauma Cruz's gang has inflicted on them. But David knows the fight is not over yet. Victor Cruz confronts David. Just as David begins to feel the first wave of relief, the sound of footsteps breaks through the quiet. He turns sharply, his instincts immediately alert. There, emerging from the shadows, stands Victor Cruz, his face twisted in anger, his eyes cold and calculating. Despite the chaos, Cruz looks calm, as if he's already come to terms with his defeat. "You really think you've won, Walker?" Cruz sneers, his voice dripping with venom. "You think saving one little girl makes up for all the others I've taken? You think you're a hero now?" David's hand instinctively reaches for his gun, but he stops himself. Cruz isn't just a criminal, he's a symbol of everything David has been fighting against, everything that's taken his attention away from what truly matters, his family. The realization hits David hard. His mission was never just about stopping Cruz. It was about restoring the balance he lost in his own life, finding redemption for his past mistakes. David takes a deep breath and steps forward, trying to maintain control of the situation. He keeps his eyes fixed on Cruz, refusing to let him manipulate the moment. "I didn't come here for glory, Cruz. I came here to make sure people like you never hurt anyone again," David says firmly. The final confrontation. Cruz's eyes narrow. "You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a man who's lost everything, just like me. The only difference is that I know how to take what I want." His hand reaches for the gun strapped to his waist, but before he can draw it, David is already moving. The room becomes a blur of action as David and Cruz face off. A tense standoff ensues, each of them trying to outmaneuver the other in a deadly game of cat and mouse. Cruz makes a lunge toward David, but David sidesteps, pulling his gun just in time to disable Cruz's weapon. The two men struggle, each trying to gain the upper hand. But David is relentless now, his focus razor-sharp. He can't let Cruz escape again. Not after everything. The battle is not just physical, it's personal. David's entire life has led to this moment, and there is no turning back. With one final move, David subdues Cruz, disarming him and pinning him to the ground. David looks down at Cruz, his heart pounding. For a moment, it feels as if time has stopped. The room falls silent, except for the distant sound of sirens, signaling that the authorities are on their way to take Cruz into custody. David's breath comes in sharp gasps, but there's a sense of calmness that settles over him. The sacrifice. Despite subduing Cruz, David feels the weight of his past decisions crushing him. He could have taken the shot, ended Cruz's life right there, but something holds him back. This moment isn't about revenge. It's about justice, and about David realizing that his choices matter, not just for the case, but for his future. As Cruz is taken away in handcuffs, David's thoughts turn inward. He finally understands the true cost of his job, the sacrifices he's made, and the toll it has taken on his family. He hasn't just sacrificed his time, he's sacrificed meaningful relationships, love, and his sense of peace. And now, he must find a way to repair what's broken. He looks at Lily, still in his arms, her wide eyes filled with gratitude and trust. He realizes that the biggest sacrifice he's made was losing sight of what truly matters, his family. And now, as the case winds down, David knows that his real work has just begun. It's time to repair the damage he's done to the people he loves most. Rescue success and emotional closure. With Cruz securely in custody, the tension in the warehouse starts to ease. The immediate threat has been neutralized, but David is far from feeling relief. His hands, still trembling from the confrontation, hold tightly onto Lily as they make their way out of the warehouse. His team follows behind, escorting the freed children to safety. The weight of the night's events begins to sink in, but it's the look on Lily's face that stays with him. She's safe. She's here. And for now, that's all that matters. As they step outside, the first light of dawn begins to break over the city. The chaos of the night has passed, and for the first time in a long while, David feels a quiet, fleeting sense of peace. The sirens fade into the distance as the authorities take Cruz away, and the team begins to process the aftermath of the mission. But for David, the hardest part is yet to come. Reflection and internal conflict. Back at the precinct, David sits in a quiet room, his mind replaying the events of the night. The sound of the gunfire, the sight of Lily trapped in that cage, the look in Cruz's eyes as he was taken down, they all swirl in his head. But among all the images, one stands out, the face of his daughter, trusting him to save her, trusting that he could make things right. The reality hits him, this job, this life of danger, has been the reason he's missed so many precious moments with her. He's been living in the shadows of his profession, sacrificing his relationships, his family, for what? For a sense of duty that, in the end, feels hollow. David takes a deep breath and looks down at his phone. There's a new message from Sarah. She's written, "We need to talk. I'm waiting for you at home." He stares at the text for a long moment. The temptation to ignore it, to stay focused on work, to shut out the vulnerability of his personal life, is strong. But for the first time, he knows he can't. He rises from his chair, determined. The case is over, but the real work, repairing his life, repairing his family, has just begun. The lesson learned. David makes his way back home. The drive is long, and each passing mile feels like an eternity. He spent so many years running from the truth, telling himself that his job came first, that the sacrifice was necessary. But tonight, he learned the hard way that no victory is worth losing the people you love. As he arrives home, the door is slightly ajar. He steps inside and finds Sarah sitting on the couch, her eyes tired but waiting. For a moment, the silence between them speaks volumes, the years of separation, the unsaid words, the emotional walls they've both built. David takes a deep breath and sits beside her. He doesn't know exactly what to say, but he knows he has to start somewhere. "I'm sorry," he says, his voice quiet but sincere. "For everything. I've been so focused on my job that I didn't see what I was losing. I didn't see you, or Lily. But I want to change that. I want to be there for you, for both of you, no matter what." Sarah looks at him, her expression softening, but there's still a trace of caution in her eyes. She nods slowly. "I know you're sorry, David. But it's going to take time. I need to see that you mean it. That you're willing to make us a priority." David nods, understanding the weight of her words. He knows it won't be easy, but he's ready to do whatever it takes. This is the first step, and it's the hardest one. But it's the most important. Ending scene. The camera pulls back as David and Sarah sit together on the couch, the light of the evening outside casting a soft glow through the window. David's arm rests lightly on Sarah's, a quiet gesture of reconciliation. Lily appears in the doorway, her small figure silhouetted against the hallway light. She looks at her father with cautious hope in her eyes, and David smiles gently, reaching out for her hand. "Everything's going to be okay now," he whispers to her. Lily climbs onto the couch and snuggles between her parents. For the first time in a long time, David feels whole, as if he's finally found his way back home, not just to his house, but to the people who matter most. He knows that this is just the beginning of the healing process, but for now, he's content to sit quietly with his family, the chaos of the world outside forgotten for a moment. As the scene fades to black, The last words echo in David's mind. I've learned that saving others starts with saving what matters most, your family.